And welcome, everyone. I'm Bill Newell with MSO News Sports. We've got the sports writers from the Salem News and, of course, Nick Kukuru from the Gloucester Times, Phil Stacey, Nick Giannino, Matt Williams just popping in. I know Matt's been bouncing in and out a little bit as we've been warming up here. So hopefully he'll be able to join us. And gentlemen, welcome. Good to be seeing you guys again.
Glad to be here.
All right. Well, let's take a quick look back at this past week. Lots of basketball, hockey to report on from the local scene. Nick, why don't I start with you with some basketball notes? I know we were just talking before we started. I know Peabody boys had a nice win. On the girls' side, the Peabody girls also had a nice win. They're 2-0 with a win over at Winthrop. So, but maybe some boys hoop notes, Nick.
Yeah, sure. I'll start with Peabody there because that's good to see them get off on the right foot, and they beat Gloucester, one of Nick's teams over there. And Drew Lucas, who Thad Broughton was expecting big things of this year. He was on the team last year, kind of a reliable guy for them, but didn't do a ton of scoring. And, he could kind of explode at times for a 20-point game. But he had 20 points in the first game in that win, so scored almost half of their points when they only had 49 to get the W. So good start for Thad over there and Thad Broughton and the Tanners. I also got the chance to see Masconomet a few times already. They're operating under the interim head coach, Steve Heinz, with Brian Duplessis deciding to take the year off this year. It's funny, I was actually, and I don't know if Brian's going to listen to this podcast, but I was at the game this past week, and they had the camera doing the stream so people could watch online. And I was the only one sitting up in the bleachers in the student section where the students would normally be cheering. And I got a text from Brian mid-game or first quarter, and he said, "Do the wave, you're in the student section." I was the only one in there. So definitely it's interesting from that standpoint, kind of an empty gym for most of these games, but the Zooms or the streams, whatever they're doing to record those games and get them up online, they seem to be doing well. A lot of people are tuning in. I think the prep in particular will have a lot of viewers, but some of these other schools have been, I think I was watching the Ipswich one, it climbed up to close to 200 viewers. So people are definitely tuning in, which is a good thing. You can catch these games even if you can't get out there. But on the court, Masco, like I said, I've seen them a couple times now. They're battling, and their coach Heinz said, it's just going to be a grind all year long. It's a kind of a new group, a younger group, but they do have some guys that came back, and they're just trying to figure it out right now. I've noticed at all the games I've been at, there's been some pretty sloppy play, a lot of turnovers, missed bunnies that you don't see later on in the season. So teams are trying to still get their feet underneath them here. No preseason scrimmages, lack of practices leading up to the season. And while a lot of these kids have been working on their game in the off season as much as they can, a lot of them haven't as well. And they're coming in kind of trying to, like I said, get their feet underneath them. So I think we're going to see a lot of lower scoring games early on this year. Although Fenwick has kind of been piling on the points when they were out there, but outside of them, it's been pretty low scoring. Same thing with Marblehead in that game. That Masco Marblehead game, the final score was 39-37. I think both teams had single-digit points in the first quarter. And I wrote about it. You could credit a lot of that to defense. All these teams really want to get after it early. They're just happy to be back out there. Everyone's playing aggressive, but definitely some rust and some easy corrections that can be made on the court to kind of get these games going more smoothly. But it's been a good start overall.
Phil, what about on the hockey scene?
Yeah, I think there's probably some similarities there. There's been a little bit of sloppy play from what I've seen so far. It seems for the most part, which I think is good, there haven't been a ton of penalties called, which doesn't bog down the gameplay. But you do notice some things that are, more characteristic of what we normally see in early to mid-December rather than this point in the year, which I suppose goes along with the actual games just starting. By and large, though, it's still pretty much hockey as we know it on the ice, at least. I'm a little surprised that we haven't seen more calls with plays along the boards and things like that. When there's been like a third person joining in, it's supposed to be two people along the boards or whatnot, but it's only been for like a second or so, and it usually ends. So the referees are letting that stuff go, which is fine. We've talked about it before. You're obviously noticing the spacing on the bench and players outside the bench and whatnot. Of course, everyone masked. The games themselves have been all right. Saw Gloucester open up with Peabody a week ago, and Gloucester looked good. A lot of offense for the Fishermen. Good looking freshman, Emerson Marshall. Kooks, you can touch on him if you want, but he had a hat trick against Peabody. Looked really good. Jack Costanzo. Of course, most people know Jack. He's coming up on 100 career points as a junior. I think he had 5 points tonight. I saw him. But, the thing with Peabody, Bill, is that they only have 10 skaters, and they had one goalie. They should get a couple more skaters back from, sickness with COVID protocols and whatnot. But it's not a deep team, so they get a little bit worn down in that Gloucester game. But then 4 nights later, they go over to Winthrop. They're trailing 4-1 after 2 periods. And they end up scoring 3 times in the third, including twice with the goalie pulled to tie the game. So that's a big point for Peabody, not only in the standings, but also I think for their self-confidence and knowing that, the system that Coach Christian Wright has put into place can work if the players buy into it. And certainly no one is complaining about ice time over in Peabody. Got some teams opening up this weekend who I'm looking forward to seeing later today. You got St. John's Prep opening up. Home game against the Varian Eagles is going to be very young. They only have, I think, like 4 kids with varsity experience in the roster. So completely new team and, tough. Their schedule is always difficult, but Catholic Conference only schedule. No cupcakes this year. It's going to be trial by fire for St. John's, but that's okay. They'll get better. And Masconomet and Beverly are both opening up today up at Masco's home rink up at in Chelmsford, right? The Valley Farm in Haverhill. Masconomet appears to be very, very good again. Back-to-back Cape Ann League champions. Of course, this is their first year in the Northeastern Conference. Beverly's going to be missing some players today, sickness-wise, maybe 6 guys or so. They'll have a short bench, but they'll be up there. They'll be ready to go, and I think they're going to be an improved team under second-year head coach Greg Fonzie. Looking forward to that. And, of course, tomorrow, Sunday, Marblehead and Danvers open up with, I want to say it's Marblehead's home game, but they're playing at Cronin Rink in Revere. So be curious to see how those 2 teams fare. So a lot of openers this weekend that I'm looking forward to checking out.
I can jump back to basketball real quick.
Please do.
The Eagles at the Prep, they open up this weekend too. I'll be over at that game for they're playing St. John's Shrewsbury. So, but a lot of new faces there. And another team I wanted to mention and kind of give a shout out to here was Ipswich. They started off the year with 2 straight losses, but they were both competitive and they were right in it till the final quarter. I think they lost by about 10 to Newburyport and just a couple points to North Reading. No, I'm sorry. Who was the Manchester Essex? They lost by 3 to them. And then they came out and beat North Reading earlier this week. So kind of an encouraging start for the Tigers, who have struggled to find the win column in the past few years. I know they're only 1-2 right now, but all 3 games have been super competitive, and they probably had a chance to win all 3 of them. So shout out to Ipswich. It's nice to see them get on the winning track here.
We'll go to Nick Kookaroo, but I think I noticed Manchester Essex had a nice win too. I'm blanking out who they beat, but I was who that was. But they've been what's the boys? Yeah,
they're 3-1. They beat Triton in overtime the other night.
Okay,
I think their only loss was to Newburyport, and they played 4 games. All 4 of them have been decided by 3 points or fewer. So they've been coming down to the wire every night this season.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this week in my area, kind of milestones have been the big headlines. Rockport's Kylie Schrock, only a junior, got her 1,000th point on Wednesday in a 30-27 win over Georgetown. She's been their leading scorer since she was in 8th grade, averaging double figures, and she's averaging about in the high teens so far this year. They're playing on the Cape Ann League, a much more difficult schedule than last year. But she scored 62% of her team's points so far this season. So she's kind of earned that 1,000 points. She's kind of, she gets the brunt of the defense, and she still finds a way to put up big points every night. And as Phil alluded to, Jack Costanzo, he's also closing in on 100. So they're hosting Swampscott tonight. He needs 4 points to get to 100 points. He's also only a junior, so that's a big to look out for. And lastly, Gloucester girls hockey got started up in my area. They haven't been a varsity team for about 12 years. 2007, 2008 was their last varsity season. 13 years now, I should say. And so they returned Wednesday night. They lost 5-1 to Winthrop, but for a first varsity game, they didn't look completely overmatched at all. They're obviously going to go through some bumps in their first season in the league they play in with a bunch of established programs, but they at least look like they got something going. 10 freshmen on the team, so they look like they could be a factor in in the near future.
Let's jump to Matt Williams. Matt, we haven't heard from you, but so what can you share with us from this past week?
It's been an interesting week, I guess. Things are really still getting started. Not really a lot going on just yet. I think, Bishop Fenwick's girls hockey team, I think, is playing very well. And Nick sort of alluded to one of his teams playing a tougher schedule. And I think that's what's going on for Fenwick. They've been reticent to join the Catholic Central League. They've sort of had their toe in the water. We'll play a couple teams, but we're going to remain an independent. And, there was some push from the athletic department, like, hey, you girls, it's time. And they said, we don't know if it's time. And, this year with COVID, they don't have a choice, right? You're only allowed to play league games. So they got thrown in the water, and they're doing very well, So I think this is what we're going to see in the league time from here onward. And that's a really good thing. And, like I said, sometimes you get thrown in the deep end and you swim, and Fenwick's swimming. So that's pretty cool to see so far this year. I think, the as far as their programs come in the last 3 or 4 years, they belong out there with St. Mary's and Austin and Mackinac. I'm not saying they're going to beat those teams, but they're not going to get embarrassed. They're not going to give up a dozen goals. I think they can play with anybody, and it's only going to make them better going forward.
Guys, anybody want to comment on any of the sports that we haven't really touched on? Haven't touched a lot on girls basketball. I know, Matt, you're doing some coverage there as well on that front.
I think, at this point, Mascot had beaten Marblehead early in the year. It sort of, I think, establishes them as the team to beat in the Northeastern Conference. And I think, one kid that maybe hasn't gotten as much attention as some of the others is Jenna D Pietro, the guard they have. Tremendous defensive instincts. I've only seen one game, and I saw her get a steal and go coast to coast for a bucket the other way, I think 3 times in that game. So just a kid that's really good at taking chances and taking the ball away from her opponents. Masco's deep. They're a lot more than just Morgan Bavardi. Jenna can defend and score. Kylie McSweeney, who is about 5'11", 6 feet tall. I don't know how she plays field hockey. She bends down that far to, because field hockey, you're pretty much squatting the whole game, right? So I can imagine since she's pretty good at that. That's why she's a Division I field hockey player, right? That great reach. But, with 2 guards that can shoot and Callie underneath the hoop, I don't know who's going to be able to match up with Mascot Ahmed. Maybe Peabody, you got Amber Kirakoppels in the paint, and their guards are very young, not as experienced as Masco's, but certainly if Amber and Callie get matched up there in the paint, you're talking about like, McHale and Parrish type of thing. The 2 of them, I both have seen the traditional post moves, which is nice, kids that have the footwork and stuff. That's cool to see. So, just early in the year, I guess those would be the things that stand out for me. Both Peabody and Masco, neither one of those girls' teams was really a chuck and duck team. Neither one of them settled for a lot of long range shots. They were working the ball around and trying to get easy layups, and that's nice to see.
I know, speaking of basketball, the few teams that haven't started yet, you have Danvers. Their boys and girls are going to open up on Tuesday against Saugus. And this is a sports writer's dream if you have an early deadline. Any Danvers varsity games are going to be 4 p.m. starts, which is great. No problem there making deadline, right, Nino?
Oh yeah.
And
30-inch gamers too.
yeah. Also, both Salem High and Salem Academy Charter School, they'll open up next week. And I suppose not coincidentally, they're going to be playing each other a home and home next Tuesday and Friday. So that's kind of a neat thing where those schools, get a chance to play each other a couple of times. And, I don't know of any other Northeastern Conference schools that are playing teams outside the conference this year, but it's a nice exception to be made for Salem High School with Salem Academy, and I'm sure a lot of friends get to play against one another in a situation like that. So those should be a couple of good games next week as well.
Well, we do want to jump to a couple of pro notes here, including the NFL in just a moment. But Nick, let's go to Celtics and Bruins. And Nick G, what about the Celtics? What's your take on the green?
Well, they haven't played in a while now with these COVID protocols. They're a little thin, but it looks like we're recording this on Friday. It looks like they'll be back in action tonight or last night if you're watching this on Saturday. It hasn't really hurt them being off these past couple weeks. They're actually first in the conference now, having not played a game in 10 days or so. So that hasn't hurt them, and it looks like they're going to get Kemba Walker back, which is nice. He was practicing this week. He could provide that extra scoring punch they might need and kind of facilitate the offense a little better. But I think the Celtics are off to an encouraging start, despite what people may see. Sometimes that they're having trouble closing games here, but their record is still pretty good at 7-3, even though they've had a lot of these close games or a lot of these games that have come down to the wire. So they should be pretty happy with where they stand, despite them not playing to their full potential up to this point. And in terms of the big trade that went down in the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference with James Harden forcing his way out of Houston there and then getting into a situation in Brooklyn where he's going to be paired up with Kyrie Irving, who's been, that's a whole story for a different day, but it looks like he'll be back soon, and Kevin Durant. So the Celtics were in the mix for James Harden. I thought maybe, Danny Ainge would surprise us here and kind of do a blockbuster to bring Harden in, but apparently the Rockets wanted Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, and a bunch of picks, and Ainge and the Celtics weren't comfortable giving all that away, and I am totally with that decision. I think there's an argument to be made that Jaylen Brown is a better, more complete player than James Harden, which some of you would probably find hard to believe, but I think it's getting to that point. Jalen's kind of does it all for the Celtics. He scores, he's an efficient scorer. He can rebound, he can pass, he's aggressive, he plays good defense. And when you look at James Harden, he's more one-dimensional, dribble, shoot, swish a three, or brick it. That's kind of the, he can get to the rack, obviously, too, and he can pass it a little. But I think, keeping Jaylen Brown in that system with the Celtics, that was an important piece for them, and they weren't willing to part with that. I think if you brought in Harden, it would completely change the makeup of the Celtics and almost be like a restart for them. So I'm totally cool with Harden going to the Nets, and chances are they implode anyway with all that offensive firepower. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think the ceiling for them is championship for sure, just with that talent, but it could go south in a hurry if all these guys can't mesh together.
Serious question. Okay. Why would you want a clown like that on your team? A guy who, for all of his obvious talent, is going to pout and whine and mope and force his way out when things aren't the way he wants them to be. For the life of me, I don't understand that.
Yeah, and a lot of teams, I saw something on Twitter, I think a lot of GMs laughed at the trade because a lot of these other teams, you're right, don't want James Harden. They definitely don't want Kyrie Irving. I think that there was a time there within the past few days where they might have done a swap for those two, might have got rid of Kyrie, said the heck with this guy, he's out doing whatever and not talking to the team, but that obviously didn't happen. I don't know. I think the Nets have three of the most controversial players in the NBA. So it's going to be interesting to see how all three of those guys mesh with Durant, Harden, and Irving. The talent is undeniable, but we'll see if it works out on the court.
Phil, I know the Bruins opened up this week, and they're underway for I guess what you call the 2021 season, right? And
Yeah.
So you only have to use the 1 year, anyways. So your quick take on the Bees?
Well, shootout win in Jersey Thursday night, back at it Saturday afternoon, and then they play the Islanders Monday before their home opener against the Flyers on Thursday. I mean, so far so good. I would have liked to have seen them bury a few more chances Thursday night. I wasn't crazy about the second goal they gave up after taking the lead with about 5 minutes to go, but considering they didn't have David Pastrnak, they still went 2 for 5 in the power play. They still won a ton of faceoffs. I think they won like 63% of faceoffs. Patrice Bergeron looked good. Kevin Millar coming back to the lineup looked good. Kevin Miller, I should say Kevin Millar. Yeah. Kevin Miller coming back to the lineup for the first time in 21 months, I think. Looked good out there. Tuukka Rask, having left the bubble to tend to a family matter with one of his daughters. For the most part, he looked good. So I think they're going to be fine. I think it's a tough division, and points are really at a premium, so you can't afford to be giving them away, especially in an every other day format that they're going to be playing. But I think they're going to be fine. I think they'll be, per usual, one of the top teams in their division, if not the whole league. And if they need some help on defense or anywhere else, they have about $3 million in cap space. So I feel confident they'll be able to go out and find someone via trade, maybe to fill that hole. So see how it goes, but I'm not worried.
Well, I know last week we got into the NFL playoffs, and actually you guys had some great insight into the games that were coming up last weekend. So let's look at the games this weekend and get some of your takes on them. The Saturday games today's games: Rams, Packers, Ravens, Bills, and then on Sunday tomorrow, Browns, Chiefs, and Tampa Bay and the Saints. So I don't know where you guys want to go with that. I just threw out all 4 games right there. And Nick Kukuru, why don't I start with you? What do you want to talk about on those?
Well, I mean, I think Tom Brady's got a good chance of moving on again. I think this is kind of the time. I think the Bucs are playing well. I know the Saints cleaned their clock the last 2 times, but they looked pretty ordinary last week. Drew Brees looks like his last leg is just about finished. I don't know. I think Brady could rise to the occasion this week and lead them to the next round. At least I hope so. I have him on my playoff fantasy team and I'm starting him. So I don't know if it's wishful thinking, but I think they have a real good chance.
It'd be fun to see Brady and Brees go at it one more time here too. If this is in fact Brees' last hurrah.
I think that Buffalo and Baltimore game will be really good later on tonight. I think Buffalo will win, and I would be rooting for them to win from a fan's perspective. But Buffalo is peaking at the right time. Although, did I hear something that said Lamar Jackson has never played a game in the snow? I mean, I don't know if that really matters or not, but could factor in if the weather is not any better by game time. Buffalo is just flying, though. They're really, really playing well. And a little bit of a slow start last week, but they got on track. And Baltimore looked good, but I don't think as impressive. So I don't know. They can bring it, though. They get the experience. And Jim Harbaugh maybe not be a guy I'd want to be talking with at a dinner party, but for all the dinner parties I go to, but he can coach, so that should be a real good game. I think the Packers will roll, though. I think that'll be a blowout the first game.
What about the Browns? Anyone think the Browns can beat the Chiefs here?
By the way, you guys called the Browns right last week against Pittsburgh, so you guys had some insight on that one. What's that? Not you?
I was the only one to pick the Steelers.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really?
Well, Willie, you were big on the Browns.
I did pick the Browns. I mean, but I don't know about beating Kansas City. I mean, only guy that's ever beat Kansas City in a playoff game with Mahomes is Tom Brady, right? So I don't know if Baker's quite ready for that, but it is nice to see him bounce back. A lot of really so-called smart national beat writers left Baker for dead after a tough year last year. And I think, I mean, I'm no expert NFL beat writer, but I kind of chalk that up to the coach. So it's nice to see that proven correct, and to see him having some success. That's what the league needs, is some guys. We put so much emphasis on the quarterback. I was thinking about Drew Brees, and if he wins this week, he would have beaten Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl and now beaten Tom Brady in a playoff game. And right, how many guys have ever done that? I mean, Ben Roethlisberger hasn't. The Steelers have never beaten the Patriots, but then I found out that the two quarterbacks that have done that are the immortal Joe Flacco and Mark Sanchez. So I mean, maybe the quarterback doesn't matter as much as we think it is when those are the two guys that have beaten Brady and Manning.
I just want to know if Baker Mayfield is the real deal, and would you like to pen a gem on him?
I would. And, I think, something else we can throw out there, there's a lot going on about the fans at these high school games, right? I mean, a lot of consternation, and even some of the games I've been at, dads have been poking their head in and hey, good
The
news.
experts are writing about it.
At least our friends on the police force can keep their game details, because they still have to be there for these sneaky people to escort them out the door. So, I mean, that's good news. But no, really, I mean, you guys know I sort of lean away from some of the restrictions. It's been talked to on the podcast all the time. I'll criticize the governor, the MIAA, whatever. But this fan stuff, I mean, how can you blame anybody? I mean, if you actually go to these games, one half of the gym is reserved just for the players because they have to spread out in the bleachers. So now you've already lost half of your bleachers, and you might have the other half. I mean, listen, stay home and watch on TV. I mean, if your kid plays at Endicott College and you're from Florida or Oregon or something, you watch on a stream anyway. So, as long as these things are available on the stream, I kind of personally think it's much ado about nothing. And, I've seen a lot of talk about that today. So I thought it was an interesting topic. I don't know what you guys think about it.
Well, like I said, I thought the streams have been good. I watched a game, covered a game off a stream last week, and camera people have done a pretty good job. It's clear quality. It's, there's something kind of exciting about it. You could even stream it on your TV if you really wanted to, kind of like watching a real game. I think it's tough for some of these parents and family members that they can't actually be there and see their kid play, but the next best thing is watching it on the tube or the computer or iPhone or whatever it may be. And I think that's working out pretty well considering the circumstances.
I think people tend to forget one little thing. We are in a pandemic. That's why people can't go to these games.
Right.
This is not rocket science. I mean, of course, I feel bad for people that can't go to games. But, let's boil it right down here. Administrators and gyms and ice rinks are not concerned that you can't watch Johnny or Jane play. They're concerned with keeping the people that have to be there to actually play or coach or officiate safe. That's the bottom line. So they're just trying to do what's best for everyone by keeping people safe. The more parents you bring in, the more chance that, hey, studies have shown that there's a greater risk that somebody is going to be, whether it's asymptomatic or pass it along, whatever, and then the school's going to shut down for, or the team's going to shut down for a couple of weeks. So would you rather watch it on a live stream, or would you rather your kid not play? I mean,
right.
To me, it's not that difficult.
Right, because it doesn't, to that point, it doesn't matter if someone in the crowd has it or if a player has it. If someone's in the gym that tested positive, they're going to have to shut down. So right. Less people in the gym, less risk to, hit the pause button here.
Hey, and I realize that it's easy for me / us to say we can go to these games and cover them. I get that. That's a little bit disingenuous, but this is our job. This is like our occupation we get paid to do and report these things. I believe I said it last week, and I probably speak for all of us, whether you have children or not. Would it be eat at me if I couldn't go watch one of my kids play? Yeah, of course it would. But on the flip side, I would understand why that was. It wasn't just like, sorry, you can't come in. No, there's a pandemic we're trying to really get a hold of here before it gets worse. So this is why.
Well, I know our time is up. I'm going to just take the final word on that because I know that we talked about this last week. just think where we were back in August, and to think that we're able to do what we're doing now without fans. I think we're in pretty good shape, all things considering, as you mentioned, Phil, being in a pandemic. So there they are, the sports writers with us again this week, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Sounds good, Bill.